Hello, Zeteo here. We're going to be looking at a Beyond All Reason replay analysis. Today we're looking at Just Difference as they play on the Rock Jungle. Now, one thing I want to point out before we even start the match is just the layout of the terrain. There isn't like a ton of distance between you and your opponents, and this high ground here generally should belong to you because it's closer to your side. So that kind of plays into what we should be looking at here, because if you look at it, there's really only 4 mexes for you here. It's not a lot. And so these 3 mexes here on this higher ground here become really important. And so there was talk in the academy chat today about when to move your commander out, like what are the key things to look for in terms of the terrain. And now I'd say it comes down to a couple of things. The biggest one is the amount of metal, the percentage of metal that you're fighting over, and how easy it is for you to get there compared to your opponents, if there's a difference at all. In this case, this is easier for you, so that plays into it a little bit, but there's also like quite a high percentage of metal here for you. The other thing to consider is just like where the choke points are in the terrain on this map. Of course, that would be like here and here for the other side. So this water here becomes a boundary that you want to think about a little bit. And yeah, we'll take a look at Just Different here as he moves his commander out pretty early. Let's get into it. All right, so how are you opening here? Opening the mex. All right, first mex down, being constructed. Going up. All right, second mex. All right, second mex going up. Good stuff. All good stuff so far. All right, third mex. Third mex is going up. All pretty good so far. However, with the third mex, you do not want to do wind next because you're out of metal after those 3 mexes, out of energy after those 3 mexes, and you want that energy to be able to produce this wind turbine. Some of these mexes went offline, for moments because they don't have the energy to produce metal. They require energy to pump metal out of the ground, essentially. So if you're going to do 3 mex opener, it should be solar next, but it is a wind map, and wind is, started out quite high. So with that in mind, you don't really want to do a solar either. You should actually just do wind. So what you want to do is mex, wind, mex, wind, winds, lab. Wind instead of the solar, essentially. If you're going to do, open with the solar, that, then it would just be mex, winds, mex, winds, solar. Or you could do all 3 mexes, solar, and then 2 winds, and then your lab. So there's there's variations. The key points is you don't want to stall. You don't want to stall on that energy because that turns off important things. So that's basically rule number 1 of bar. It's just like don't be completely out of energy like you are right now. The second thing I want to talk about is just how far you had to walk for the lab. It's kind of it's not like the biggest deal at this level of play, but like every second counts, and now you're a few seconds behind because you had to walk to put that lab down. And then third, we just saw you produce this energy storage, and it's just too early for it. You only start with, I think it's like 1,000 energy storage. So this thing costs 1,700 energy for arms. So that's just a lot. I'm going to pause here because I'm getting a little bit behind on things I want to talk about. But yeah, so when you build this, you want to have some more income before then, so that you're not completely just like draining all of your energy, so that you have some income coming in while you build it. And then you should be able to get it up without stalling. I usually recommend around 12 wind turbines or so. This is just way too early. Like, it's fine if you are overflowing, some energy. It's not really that big of a deal. It becomes a bigger deal when you're like 50 OS or something, where you're just, like every tiny little bit counts, but I wouldn't worry about it until like you're much higher. I don't even worry about it in my play, and I'm in my 30s for OS. Let's see. Next thing I want to talk about is the ticks here. So ticks cannot cross most water. You can basically rule that as they just can't. like if you want to simplify things. But if you want to be technical about it, they can cross water if it's 5 depth or less. And you can check that by mousing your cursor over the terrain, and at the bottom left, it shows the elevation. So elevation here is -16. So if it was -5, they could cross. Otherwise, you can highlight the tick and then go to your traversability screen. I honestly forget what the key is for it. For me, it's F5. I use custom keys, though. I'm not sure if it's F5 normally. But yeah, so purple here, you can't cross. Orange is like you're slowed down. And then green is like good stuff. It's hard to tell, but the water is purple here. It's just under the water, so it's kind of, kind of really hard to see, to be honest. And I wish that was a little bit more visible. But yeah, these ticks cannot cross this water. Anyways, let's unpause now. Let's see, producing a couple of cons. That's good stuff. Boosting with the comm, that's also great. You want to get this stuff out pretty quick. Now you have cons coming out to be able to, help build stuff in the base. All good stuff so far. Okay, what do you do from here? Okay, so you're going to reclaim the ticks? Yeah, okay. I guess that's okay. I would say like the bigger priority should be spending the metal, because this initial point, it's very important to, just kind of grow as fast as possible. And reclaiming the ticks isn't really growing you all that well. So you got a couple of cons here. One's producing some wins, another one's producing some converters. I wouldn't get this yet. You don't need it. You're not you're below the threshold for converting, which is the slider you can move around. I would prioritize grabbing mexes. You're grabbing one with your commander, which is okay. But I would say that this is kind of a long walk to build that mex. Instead, I would say boost the lab, build energy as you need it, like build some wind turbines with it. Send this con instead to grab this. And then, and honestly, you actually have quite a bit of metal here, like stored up. And you can afford to put down a construction turret. Now, the thing to think about with that is they are kind of expensive in terms of energy. If you, at least for like very, very early on, if you try to build one with support, and they should be supported because they take a while to build. So like having your comm help boost that construction turret out helps immensely, because now you have 200 build power in your base to, help build units, help build some wind, things like that. So all really good stuff if you do that. The only thing to keep in mind with it is, or I guess the other thing to keep in mind with it is, 200 build power is kind of substantial, and it's going to drain more resources. So your energy production's a little bit low for that. So you want to build that up to, what's it called? Just like an anticipation of having it, so, boost out a little bit with your commander, build some extra energy, boost it out some more. And then after it's done, then you can walk forward. And it'll still be pretty early. And that way you're kind of doing the best of both worlds, where you have a fairly early move out with your commander, but then you also have plenty of build power back at home to help build more and more units. And just, supplement how fast, supplement the con here so that these wind turbines can build faster. So on this map, because, like 3 mexes here is a big percentage of mexes, like the total mexes you can have, compared to like what you have at home, you only have 4 here. So 3 is kind of a large number. So it's really important that you get this, and it's important that you, you want to move your comm out at a reasonable time to make sure that you have them. It's just like a lot of metal. So here you're building that construction turret, and it's just a little bit, it's gonna take a long time, because the con alone only has 80 build power. You can see that I'm holding the I key right now if you want to bring this up. You can also check at the bottom here. It says build power 80, or you can, the hover comes up here too. But that gives you some more information, some more stats to work with to help you understand the game. But yeah, in terms of like just coming up here, grabbing the mexes, getting a radar, very important. And you don't really need an LLT right now, so it's fine that you don't build one immediately. And yeah, just building on some energy, getting some build power. Your energy or your metal's quite high, so you know, this construction turret will help a lot. Just produce a lot more units. And I like the fact that you started with some pawns here and are now transitioning into thug or not thugs, maces, maces for armada. Um, but yeah, it's a good time to transition because you are holding this space. You know, you're in a um, you know, you don't need to push forward. There isn't a lot of like walking room, and you have this narrow passage that's, yeah, preventing things like pawns from just like running around. Like if this was more open, then more pawns would be better because then you could like run around their defenses and get into their base and do some raiding and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it is a good choice to go thugs here, or I'm sorry, again, maces here, and maybe even some rocket bots. Oh, okay, perfect. Some rocket bots too. Excellent. Rocket bots, of course, very good against defenses, good at just like outranging things like thugs. And if they have support from LTs, they can do a great job of like, you know, throwing some missiles. And then if they are threatened, they can like fall back to the range of the LTs so that things like raiders don't just like come up and club them. So pretty good stuff in terms of unit choices and like what you're doing with them. And yeah, just like you know, for now, holding this position is totally fine because, you know, going down this terrain into the water where the water slows you down and trying to take a fight while you're slowed down in the water is not going to go as well as it would if it was like flat land or something like that. So it just tends to be how the map goes, where it just gets kind of cut off like that. Same thing's happening on the bottom here. So all good stuff. I'm going to speed up just a little bit. But yeah, you're getting some res bots out. I'm not sure if it's to reclaim or to resurrect, but either way, it's a reasonable choice. They're just grunts, so like at this point in the game, like the grunts aren't going to matter that much. Like they'll help out, especially if you micro really well. But like, you know, it tends to be more of a long range battle at this point. So I wouldn't mind if you just reclaim them to get that metal so that you can do stuff with it. All right, so here I'm noticing that the lab was turned off. One of the things you can do to help simplify that so that you don't have to keep going back to your lab to like macro up some units. This isn't StarCraft. There is a like helper commands for you. It's called the repeat key, or this thing here. Right now it's set to off. You can in options set it to on. You know, just in the options you can like just type in repeats and it should come up, and you can toggle it on so that it just automatically set to on. But when it's on, it'll just basically repeat whatever order of units you're building. You know, so you can like set up like, oh, I want 2 pawns to every thug, you know, and then it'll make 2 pawns and then a thug and then 2 pawns and a thug. Or I'm sorry, I keep saying thug, I mean mace, mace for arm. Really, the, you know, very similar units, so, you know, not a big deal. Anyways, you're pushing out here. Little support from the tan player here, and you are able to take out all those converters that were at this forward position here. So this is all really nice. I mean, I'm not sure. Like, I wasn't looking at it close enough to, you know, to be able to gauge if it was a good time to do that or not. But I mean, it worked out. So more power to you. And then you did some damage and backed out, which is great. You know, I see a lot of players run in there and just suicide all their units trying to kill whatever they can. And then, you know, when that happens, there's like tons of wrecks for the enemy to just have, either to resurrect or reclaim. So I like the fact that you backed out. Maybe you had to do some macro. When, you know, came back over here and like, oh, maybe I could still go in there. So now you're back in there. Getting a little close to this commander. You want to spread out a little bit more against commanders so that hopefully they don't all blow up with the commander. And hopefully so that they stay out of the range of the D guns from the commander. But yeah, unfortunately, you lost basically everything there, or all your units, I should say, which it happens. Yeah, so your metal's rising here, or has risen here quite a bit. You know, since you've taken these 3 mexes, I think you needed a little bit more build power. So as a rule of thumb, take care of your energy first. Like whenever you glance at your resources, notice your energy is low, you know, fix that. Second thing, grab as many mexes as quickly as possible, obviously. because mexes, or I should say metal, is harder to get than energy. You can't just place them anywhere. You have to have territory for it. So that's a very important thing to have. But then the third thing that's is a little bit easier to forget or not quite balance quite all that well with your economy is build power. And so anytime that you see your metals start rising, you can add on a little bit more build power, whether that be a con turret or another constructor or something. It just means you can do a little bit more in terms of resources. And a con turret is a great way to help boost unit production, and units are of course good to have because that means you can threaten your opponent more with it. But yeah, you're going up to T2. No, you decide not to. I'm not sure if there's some chat about it. But yeah, it's totally fine if you don't build the T2 yourself. This guy has T2. You can actually just buy it from them. So the T2 lab, of course, it costs a ton of metal here. It's like 3,000 metal basically. And then you got to build the constructor, and then you got to upgrade the T2 mexes, and it's a lot of metal. Yeah, it's a lot of metal compared to just pinging your ally and saying like, hey, can I get a T2? And then they say yes, and then you give them like $400 for it because that's how much it costs, or I guess closer to $500 for it to get that T2. And he's really close, so that's really nice. You can just walk it over here and do upgrade your mexes. I like the fact that you push out here, but in terms of learning the game, there's some other things I want to talk about here. So I guess just to keep on with the same thing I was just saying, we should talk about like turning off your lab and stuff. So when you get a T2 builder and you're just initially upgrading mexes and stuff, you want to put as many resources into that as possible, as much build power, as much energy, and as much metal as you can. So what that usually means is turning off your lab so that you're not also producing units, so that you can funnel more of those resources into upgrading those mexes. And then if you're low on metal, you can even do things like reclaim the lab. You get 100% back from reclaiming a living thing, including structures. And so you can get that 650 metal back and put that into upgrading your mexes faster and things like that. You can do the same thing if you're the one that builds the T2 lab and you're getting your first builder that way. You can build a metal storage and then reclaim the T2 lab. You get a metal storage first because you don't quite have enough metal to store all the metal you'd get back, since it's 2,900 to get that. Yeah, 2,900. So yeah, you'd want a storage first, which actually you have right here. But yeah, so there's that aspect of it, and then there's also the advanced solars that you're making here. So this is a good idea on some maps to get some advanced solars when you're doing T2. On this map, however, wind is so good, you don't want to do that. You'd want to do this when if wind was like, say, below 16 max. And there's just a point where it's just like the wind is so strong that the cost of these is just way more than the cost of the equivalence wind, essentially. So yeah, there's definitely a break point with that. Yeah, it looks like you did some nice work over here. You brown and yellow took out all these guys here. Moving on to light green here. Getting a little close to those rocket bots, but it happens. And you're probably going to get this commander too. They're not... Okay, there's the D-guns, but I think it's a little too late here. Maybe not. Is it going to go down? A couple more rocket shots? No, okay. Your one remaining guy decides to retreat. Call in reinforcements. Not too bad. Okay, so yeah, this is what I was talking about. So now you have this builder. And, if you had bought it, obviously you wouldn't have this here. Then you could pause this and reclaim it and put that metal into here. And then you have your T1 cons that are nearby, and, whatever other build power you have, you can put towards upgrading this faster. So things like construction turrets, when you place them, you want to think about what kind of mechs, or how many mexes can it hit. You want it to be able to help the lab, but you also want it to hit as many mexes as possible. So actually, one of the better places would be down here, because then you also get this fourth mex here, and then the construction turrets can help you upgrade these. So ideally, you'd want the T2 lab and the construction turrets up here to be a little bit more in this area. Which I know it's awkward because of the high ground terrain cliff here, but yeah, it'd just be more ideal that way. Also, you really only want one T2 constructor, especially immediately. So T1 constructors are kind of cheap. They're only 110 metal. T2 constructors, however, are a lot more expensive. They're closer to 500, like between 400 and 500 metal, basically. And that's just a lot of metal that, you could be, it's a lot of metal that, it's basically just inefficient to build so many. Now, if you had your T2 constructor already capped these, and it's already moving on to these, but then you say want a fusion, then it's kind of okay to have a second T2 con. Because, you don't want to walk all the way back and wait to get that fusion. You want it now. Now, if you're a top tier player, that's too inefficient. What you actually want to do is get an air lab, get a transport, sell the air lab, get the T2, T2 factory again, and then you can transport things like construction turrets and T2 cons around to wherever they need to be. It requires a heck of a lot more micro, so I wouldn't worry about that, but I'm just throwing it out there as like, to help you think about like all the different possible ways to do things. It's kind of a lot of different ways to express your skill, essentially, if you have like the APM for it. Yeah, looking at the game here, since your bottom was taken out, looks like, orange brown and tan are moving units down here to defend the basically the flank of of whomever's left up here. Really important stuff that they have that, map awareness to like see that and, help out. Meanwhile, you're just kind of chilling over here. You got your T1 kind of, they're absorbing some shots here, but they're also preventing the T2 here from advancing. So it's kind of okay. You might want to get your commander out of here, though, because, yeah, when T2 comes out and they have such better range, you just don't want to sit there and die and take out your entire army with it. So, nice little push here, coordinated with yellow with these tigers. I'm not sure if you guys are even pinging for it, but either way, you guys are doing a nice job coordinating. And it looks like, yeah, yellow has been pinging you for it. So really nice job from yellow instinct. Communication is very OP. It's like telling your ally, like, hey, look, I want to push here. We could help each other out. It's so good. But yeah, you guys are in a pretty good spot here. Brown doing a good job here, just taking out, pushing these guys back. Not like the best of trades, but like there's just so many pawns that it's totally fine. And I like the fact that you're scaling. You're scaling your fusions up. One thing to consider, though, is you don't really want to produce extra fusions if you still have mexes to upgrade. Like, these should be prioritized. They're far more efficient than converters. Like, far more efficient. Yeah, in terms of efficiency for metal production, the most efficient is T1 mexes by a long shot. The second is T2 mexes. And then the third is, T2 conversion, and then the last one is T1 conversion. So you don't really want to do T1 conversion, and you didn't really. You built some extra because you had some extra wind, and in the situation that, or the way that you did it was totally fine. So I'm not really going to comment too hard on that. But I do see quite a few people, doing things like building winds just to convert. And they do it like in a very big way, and it's just like, well, now you don't quite have that many units because a lot of metal's going into your, into producing more wind turbines and trying to convert it, and then by the time it pays off, it's like, well, now you should have already had T2. that metal could have gone towards T2 and getting those T2 mexes faster. But yeah, that's outside of what we're talking about here for you specifically. But yeah, I like the fact that that your mind is more oriented towards like, hey, let's scale up some, especially since you're in an okay position here, and they're doing okay here at the bottom. But yeah, it is a bit of a tit for tat, so you want to be a little bit careful because if for some reason they start not doing as well down here, then all of a sudden you either have to, like, you basically have to do something in that position. Like just sitting there isn't enough. Unfortunately, these guys are just taking a lot of extra damage here. But it happens. We don't all have, crazy APM to be able to do everything. More con turrets, okay. Yeah, anytime you see you have metal, just, plop down a couple of con turrets. And then, yeah, after the fusions are done, you can reclaim these, so especially the basic solar, get rid of that. The advanced solar also, pretty inefficient, so you can get rid of those. The only reason why you'd want them is really to help out when the wind is too low, essentially. Because if wind crashes and you don't have a stable, other energy income, then it can hurt quite a bit. So usually it's recommended to get multiple storages if you have like a ton of wind, or eventually get a fusion so that you have a stable 1000 coming in. But then after the fusion, you can get rid of stuff like this. All right, so meanwhile, while you're producing this, you're also producing things like snipers and welders. Snipers, I mean, to me, you can almost never go wrong with snipers. I love snipers. Just so good against taking out things like these mammoths or even the ships out here. Like they can definitely hit these, and ships have a lot of hit points, so that can be a big deal. A few welders then, of course, to absorb some damage for the snipers. Another choice, especially since you have quite a bit of metal at this point, would be to also have a T1 lab get some spam going, like some ticks or not ticks because of the water, but things like pawns, something cheaper that you can just have a lot of, and having those in the mix, they can run forward, get vision for your snipers, so that they can like more easily land shots, because with just radar alone, there's the radar wobble that you got to worry about, and then the snipers miss shots and stuff like that. So having that line of sight is great, and at the same time they also they get attacked by the enemy units, and if it's a slow firing enemy unit, well, now it's just wasted this big damage shot on this like tiny little thing, and that also helps out your T2 units from preventing them from getting shot, basically. But yeah, overall a really nice job from your team, yourself included. One of the things that you can do, just to like throw it out there, is just like I was saying, you could reclaim the T2 lab to put that metal into upgraded mexes. You can do the same thing for big production of resources too. So like, for example, you could stop production here, reclaim the lab, especially since you have the metal storage, and if you have enough build power, you can put all those resources into getting these aphises up faster. But yeah, if you're playing like that, then it's kind of like you're deciding like, oh, I want energy, or I want resources now, or I want units now. And it's more of like a switch that you're like, switching on and off, like I want units or not. And then you can funnel those resources into something else to get that something else faster, or get more units faster, instead of trying to do both. But yeah, it looks like there was a resign, and GG is called. Yeah, pretty good. You're even thinking about anti-nuke. That's great. I mean, the game's over, but you never know. Definitely a good thing to think about. So honestly, like, not a bad job, but I think fixing a few of the things that I talked about here would really help out your play. And then just, practicing those things will propel you forward for sure. because you're doing a pretty good job outside of that. Anyways, that's it from me. I hope you learned something. Feel free to ask questions, of course, in the thread or whatever, and I'll respond to them. Thanks for watching.